Hi, today I'd like to share with you a couple of ways I found of dyeing linen thread for bookbinding. For this project I'm going to be using dye-based ink. I'm going to use cut and dry foam, which has been mounted on a block just to give it something to hold on to, make it easy to apply. I've got linen thread. This one's by Barbour, number 25, cord 3. We're going to use wax to seal the ink in because it is dye based, so it is water soluble, so the wax will help seal that in at the end. I'm going to work on a craft sheet just to stop the surface around it getting covered in ink, and we're going to have a scrap of white card which makes it a whole lot easier to see how much ink you've applied. So the first way, piece of thread, we're going to apply ink to the foam. Going to hold the thread down, and we're just going to drag the ink across the thread. Now you want to turn it over to do this, so you get all the sides. That looks pretty good. But just to be sure, if you hold it over a piece of card, you can see how much ink you've put on there. The other way is to apply the ink straight from the pad. We'll get a bit of ink on the foam. This time we're going to put the thread straight onto the dye pad. Take the foam, press it into the pad, drag the thread away, turn it over and repeat. How many times you do that, the thread will get darker. I don't know if you can see that. We'll put it on some thread card there. Yeah, so that's a lot darker than the other way. This is a good way to do it if you want to completely dye your thread and leave none of the original white thread showing. You need to set that aside to dry. How long it takes to dry really depends on where you are in the world. It's really cold and wet this time of year in England, so this can take anything from overnight to a couple of days. If you've used a lot of ink like this, it does take longer to dry. Set it aside, leave it alone. Once it's dry, take a couple of pieces I did previously, then we're going to put some wax on it. There's two reasons to put wax on the thread. For bookbinding, the wax does help keep the knots in place, and it does stop the thread from fraying. The other reason for putting the wax on is, being a dye-based ink, it is water soluble, so the wax will stop the ink transferring to your project. To apply the wax, simply put the thread over the wax, press down firmly, and with your other hand drag it across. Turn the thread over and repeat. How much wax you put on your thread to some extent will depend on the project that you're doing. Some projects you just want to seal the ink in, some you want a really good layer of wax if you're doing Coptic stitching, for example. Just a few layers like that. If you run your finger down the thread and that gets off any spare wobbly bits of wax, like that, and you can see the thread is stiffer, just a bit stiffer than it was before. Also, it feels just slightly tacky, slightly sticky. That's all there is to it. Hope we can see you again. Bye.
For more inspiration, please visit the blog on www.billiescraftroom.wordpress.com.